Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun. That was fun.
Hello, everybody in UK comic book land. I'm just about to talk with Will Carver about his new release. If you could tell us a bit more about it, we've got the cover in the middle.
Oh yeah, looks good. Okay, so the latest book is Hinton Hollow Death Trip. It follows on from the last book, Nothing Important Happened Today, but it is a standalone book as well. Essentially, my Detective Sergeant Pace, has gone back from London to his hometown of Hinton Hollow, which is a fictional village, could be any rural village in the country. He's gone back there just to escape something that he's done, and when he arrives, he seems to have brought with him some of his bad luck, and his a darkness has followed him, and the whole story of this 1 week in Hinton Hollow is told from the point of view of evil itself, which was amazing fun to do.
Yeah. You just seem to like doing dark narrators. Why is that, do you think?
I don't. God, that's a great question to start with. I'm not sure. I'm drawn to it. I think I know I know I write crime novels, thrillers, but I'm trying to say something as well in them, and these are dark times that we're living in, so
Yeah.
we should talk about it. So, and it's incredibly fun to write these dark characters right from the point of view of evil or a cult leader, and even more fun if you can inject some humor into that as well to
Yeah.
break away from the darkness.
Yeah. When it comes to Nothing Important Happened Today, you're writing from a cult in that as well. And there was a lot of research into actual cults in that book. How did that come about? And was that?
So that book, I think I've always had this fascination with that mentality of cult leaders or cult members, and I came up with the idea because I'd watched this 8-hour documentary about Jonestown, I think, and one of the people in it said that nobody joins a cult. They join a group of people that have similar interests, like similar things to them. They join because they like these people. And it never crossed my mind that no one says, I'm going to join a crazy cult where we all end up jumping off a bridge at the end, because no one would do it. No one would join that club. So
Yeah.
I just kind of wanted to explore that mentality and then take it one step further and have these people not even realize that they were part of a cult. Just take it to the nth degree.
Yeah. Doing the narrator from evil is probably the furthest nth degree you can go.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I think the story called for it. This is the third time I've written this book. I deleted it once just because it wasn't working. I was trying to do something clever with it, and I don't think I was clever enough to do it. So I deleted that version and I rewrote it as kind of just a standard crime story, a small town crime story, and that didn't quite work either. And I don't remember how I came up with the idea, but I just thought this needs to be told by a different person, not one of the characters in it.
Yeah.
And the idea of evil just really appealed to me. It's so much scope to have fun.
What is the advantage of small town over London that you did the first two books in?
Well, I think for me, I obviously 5 books before, and I've set them all in London,
Yeah.
which I love it. I love it. It's one of my favourite places. But every writer needs a break, I think. But I quite like that, that Twin Peaks vibe where everyone knows everyone, but they don't really know them, and there's something, a seedy underbelly, something that everyone has that they don't talk about, and yeah, that just appealed to me because I've been writing kind of this city urban life, yeah, so it was a break. It was a break for me, but also a break for Detective Sergeant Pace as well.
Yeah, he's kind of a facilitating character as I describe the series, because he's not actually in it a lot for a detective. Why did you go?
No, he's not.
Yeah.
He's not. I think I like the idea of having a series, but I just wanted to do something slightly different and have this. I mean, in Good Samaritans, I think Pace has got about 6 pages of stuff, and he's only really seen in news footage. And I quite liked that. But when I wrote that book, it wasn't a detective story. It wasn't a crime book. I'd written something that I thought was going to be just an examination of these 2 people and this dysfunctional relationship. And then I'd already written Hinton Hollow years ago. And I had this Pace character, and I thought, if I can get him into this book, I can bring that story out at some point in the future. And so it is, even though it's a series, it's a very loose series because, as you say, he's hardly in it. And in the second book, he doesn't even appear until page 96. It's just like, he's my main detective, and a third of the book goes by without even mentioning him.
It is quite novel, but I found it very entertaining because you got like all the what would normally be ancillary characters were taking a bigger role. What was it like writing that many characters specifically?
I wanted to do that because I've got this idea to kind of expand the series, where Maeve, who is in all 3 books, I have an idea to give her own. She needs her own full story. So while that wouldn't be a Detective Sergeant Pace book, it still will be part of the series. So I quite like the idea of having a small character that then has their own story. And this is the same with Hinton Hollow Death Trip. I do mention one character 3 times just in passing, that the next book will be about. And that's just, again, just a nice way of writing a series. Yesterday when I recorded the podcast that I did, Rob said, I'm creating the Carver verse. So I'm not quite, it's not a series. It's just like I'm creating this whole world where any character can then be part of this series and have their own book. And that's great because it means you can make every book different. You can have readers come in on the 3rd book, the 6th book, and then go back and read them all. And it doesn't really matter what order you read it in.
You wrote another series before this. Is there any chance that you might merge the characters from that one?
Well, yes, indeed. That is my plan. In Nothing Important Happened Today, there is one scene on the bridge where there are 2 detectives working the case, because Pace isn't working the main case in that book. And the two detectives in that are the 2 from my original series, January David and Paulson. So I don't mention January David's name, but I do have another book of his, so I need to somehow fit that into this Carver verse. And that was just a little taster. Again, he's a small character in there, but hopefully I can give him another book. Yes, I'd love to. I do miss him.
Theatre appears in one of them, and I believe you got a background in that.
In theatre, yes. There is. Yes, I did. I studied theatre at university in Winchester. It was awful. I used to love theatre, and then I went to university and studied it, and it sucked all the joy out of it. But so I guess if you look at the first book, Girl 4, I had kind of 7 really theatrical set pieces, and I guess I was thinking, how I'd set that up on a stage. And obviously with Nothing Important Happened Today, that the scene, the bridge scene is incredibly theatrical. So yeah, I think while it killed my love of theatre, it's still in there somewhere trying to get out in these books.
Is that where you first got into the writing side of it with scripts and that?
That's what I wanted to do. Yes, I wanted to write plays. I'd set up a theatre company at university, and we managed to put on a successful play, and then it was slightly more successful than the university theatre company, and they made it really hard for me to put anything else on. So that was the first part of my theatre death. Yeah, I forgot what the question was now.
It was about Girl 4 and the theatre in that, really.
Yeah, I can't think what I was saying. I've lost my trail of thought. Sorry.
Well, don't worry about it. Yeah. I was thinking about the jump from theatre to your
oh,
fitness.
Yes, that was it.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. Yeah, I wanted to write plays. Of course, that's it. Yes, I did. But I guess that died. That died at university, and I was reading. I was always reading a lot, and I read a Chuck Palahniuk book, Fight Club, and I'd never read a book written in such a way, and I couldn't believe you were allowed to. I'd read a lot of books, and I always have, but I couldn't believe that book. It was just amazing, and I thought, well, maybe that's what I should do. So yes. So in my last year of university, I started writing my first book, which never got published. You know, they rarely do the first ones, but I mean, I still love it, and I still have it in a drawer somewhere. But it was a dark comedy. It wasn't a crime book. It got me an agent and it got me heard, but it didn't get me the deal.
It was about suicide again, wasn't it? I heard. Say that.
Oh, what word gets around? Yes, it was. Yeah, I seem to have a fascination with that, right? Yeah, it was called Suicide Thursday. It was a dark book again, but it was supposed to be funny. It was about a guy who couldn't finish anything in his life. He hated his job and his girlfriend, and his best friend kills himself, and it inspires him to finish everything in his life. His relationship, he quits his job. But it was funny. It was funny. It doesn't sound it, but it was.
Yeah. What is important about comedy in when you're writing your dark thing? What do you think that adds to it?
Well, I think I learned this really in writing Nothing Important Happened Today, in the editing process. I'd had this, obviously, what I wanted to say about the world, and I had this agenda, and when it came back to me from the first edit, it was I needed some moments of shade, some light, because I was just hammering my point home. It was relentless, and it wasn't readable, because you have to have that break. But also these you say something funny, and it can highlight the darker, more serious moments, can't it? If just because of the contrast. Yeah, so I think it's needed, and I enjoy doing it. Yeah.
What's your favourite writer would you say that's done that for you, that you've been reading around? Because I know a lot of us do read around.
I think in the crime world, I think Helen Fitzgerald is brilliant at it. She can do dark and funny and heartfelt all in the same book. The last two that she's done, Worst Case Scenario, which was very funny, but kind of sick as well. It was just done perfectly. And again in Ash Mountain, which I think is better. I think she's getting better and better. So I think in the crime world, certainly she does that perfectly. In books, I think in other books, Chuck Palahniuk, I know I love him. I go on about him a lot, but he's been such a huge influence on me, and I think he does that well. He talks about the things that people don't really want to talk about, but injecting it with humor makes it readable and digestible.
Yeah, what would you say that you've managed to say that to people that they wouldn't want to talk about in your own work?
Well, I think there's a bit. I mean, obviously, I talk about suicide quite a bit in my books, and I think the whole mental health thing, people do want to talk about it now, but it is also, it is taboo. It's because people don't understand it, and people don't want to talk about things that they don't really understand, and they're the things that we should be talking about. So yes, I mean, and in Hinton Hollow I talk quite a bit. I mean, I'm a vegan, and I don't push my agenda on anyone, but that I do talk about treatment of animals and treatment of people, and how, you know, there shouldn't be a differentiation between the two, really. So yeah, I'll talk about anything though.
Did your veganness come about through your fitness company that you run?
Oh, thanks, Steve. Yes, yes. Partly it did. Partly it came about because my daughter couldn't have dairy, and I just thought it's not fair for me to eat ice cream in front of her, you know. So it started that way, and then yeah, all the fitness stuff. I did it mainly for that, for kind of health reasons. I wanted to feel better inside. But once you get into it, once you've been doing it for a while, you do start to think about the animals as well. I don't want to preach about veganism, but you know, it opens your eyes. It's the best thing I've done. I wish I'd done it years and years ago.
What other things would you say you've done? Because I think there was rugby somewhere in there as well.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, such a renaissance man. No, I was super sporty when I was young. I was a sprinter, a decathlete, and I played rugby as well. I ended up getting scouted for Bath Rugby Club when I was quite young, and I played there until university. And I'd signed a contract with them that meant I couldn't play for anyone else for 3 years. So when I went to university, I couldn't then play for another team where I was, and I couldn't get to Bath. So I ended it. Also, I realised I wanted to write things, and I always thought, who's going to take me seriously if I was once a professional rugby player? You know, it doesn't work.
Yeah, I can see that. I do like sports people that have like, how they go there, podcasts from like Peter Crouch stuff.
Oh yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Yeah, it's great. Yeah. But if he said, "Oh, I've just written a really dark thriller," you'd be like, "Really, Peter Crouch? Come on." You know?
Yeah. Now that you've written all those books with Aranda, because I think you said in other interviews that gave you more freedom too.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I feel really lucky. I feel really lucky to be with Aranda because of that freedom. I think if I'd have said to a bigger publisher, I've got a detective, the book is 70,000 words long, he doesn't come in for 100 pages, they'd be like, what? You need to bring him in earlier. It just wouldn't happen. And the same with, I'm writing a book from the point of view of evil. You know, I'm not sure that would happen. I wrote for a very big publisher, my first series, and I wouldn't have got away with that after the first book. I mean, my first book was probably, you know, commercially my most successful book. But still, when I came to that second book and I handed that in for an edit, there was just so much that they wanted to change that I didn't. But I was so young and new to it all. I just thought, well, they know better than me. They've been doing this. This is their job. I'll do what they say. And you know, I'm not saying they were wrong, but it killed everything for me. That second book, which, you know, I wrote the hell out of it, but I didn't want a love interest in it. I never think I need it to be 10,000 pages longer because it's coming out at summer and people want a fat book on the beach rather than a thin one. You know, yeah. I'm just writing the story, and that was very difficult, but I just did it because, you know, I was, like I said, young, and you just do what you're told. And with a render, I feel like I could come up with anything and it would at least be heard, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I do, these books do come back with edit notes and take certain scenes out. That's just awful, you can't do that. Or, you know, nothing important happened today is too dark, you need moments of light, you know. So, but the initial idea will always be heard. If I, you know, I just feel like I could say anything. And that's very liberating for any writer to have that, I think.
Is there anything you've taken out of any of your books that you wanted to really keep in?
No, not with a render. With Good Samaritans, it's quite a sexy book. You know, there's a lot of sex in it, and that often gets cut. But it was vital to the story and the characters, and that's how they kind of interacted, and it was all part of their relationship. So that stayed in. I mean, I had written a little more, so we did cut back on it, but and in Nothing Important Happens Today, it was so sparse anyway. It was there wasn't a lot to take out. In Hinton Hollow Death Trip, there was a conversation about one particular scene that I was asked to maybe tone down on or put later in the book, and I fought my corner a bit, and I changed it, but we kept it where it was, and it's the one that people do talk about. I knew they would, but no, I put my foot down.
Why do you said that you don't seem to like controversy? Why do you think that is?
Well, I like it. Well, no, I just think it's I don't know if I like it. I don't shy away from it.
Yeah.
And again, we have the freedom at a render to express ourselves in that way. You know, a lot of the books are pushing things in different directions, and it's great to be allowed to do that. And we can't get away with everything, but we do get the opportunity to try.
Is there any tropes in the industry that you'd go back into and look at altering them, like you've done with what you've done?
What do you mean?
Like, you know, popular things that like to come up that you'd like to try and subvert or something?
Oh, I'm not deliberately subverting. I'm just I pick the story and I tell it in the way that I think it should be told. So no, I don't. I mean, with crime fiction, I don't read enough and I don't know enough to think, you know what, I'd really like to change that or challenge that. So no, I just write the stories that I want to write, and I'm lucky enough to get to write them how I want to.
Yeah. Looking at, like you were saying about love interests and the dynamics in Samaritan as well, that was dealt with a bit differently by you. How did you come up with the relationship you needed for that book?
It's very dysfunctional, isn't it? But I don't know how dysfunctional it is. I mean, I used obviously some of my own experience. I was going through a split at the time, but also just people around me. I think you get to a certain age and suddenly things start breaking down. People have been with each other for a certain amount of time, and relationships change, and they don't stay on. I mean, you're lucky if you can stay on the same path for 40, 50 years. I admire that, but again, it's another thing that people don't talk about. It's him waiting for her to fall asleep on the sofa just so he can get on with what he wants to do. There are relationships up and down the country where that's happening. Men are waiting for their wives to to fall asleep, and women are waiting for their husbands to fall asleep just so they can not be with them, you know. But somehow, you know, things work, you know, and relationships all work in different ways. What works for one doesn't work for another. So while it seemed different, I don't think it is that different a relationship. I think there are plenty of them.
Yeah, a lot of people have said they'd avoid a pandemic kind of style, but I think that your dark tone might lead that way, or you might well do something.
What, pandemic wise?
What? Yeah. Would you go? Would you go there, or would you leave it?
I think I'd probably leave it until it's forgotten about, you know, or it's completely past, and then revisit it. It seems too cold to come out with something now. And I mean, you know, so there are books out that were written long before this happened, and they're just incredibly timely. But to write something now would be awful. But it does fascinate me. Kind of marriages and relationships, couples being forced to spend more time with each other than they normally would. I think we're going to see, you know, some strain, and that would be interesting to write about, I think.
Yeah, that's where I was thinking you might go.
Yeah. Oh look, I'm so predictable.
I do read a lot.
Do you read all different genres, do you?
Just crime.
Just crime.
But loads of them, so
yeah.
Is there any other authors that were in the fictions long list with you that you'd recommend to the group?
Oh, that's difficult. I have to think who was on it. Do you know what? I mean, I say it a lot. I don't read loads of crime. So obviously I read Helen. She's published by Arenda as well, but she's brilliant. And I've read Will Dean. We have the same agent. That wasn't why I read him. I just, you know, I'd heard so much about the book, and they mentioned Twin Peaks in a description once, and I was like, anything that mentions Twin Peaks, I'm in. So, and I really enjoyed that first book, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. No, I couldn't recommend anyone because I can't remember who else was on it, and I've blocked it out because I didn't make the shortlist, and that was a travesty.
Fair enough.
Did you? Shall I look at? There's a question here. Did I love reading as a child? I did. I loved it. I there's quite a big age gap between myself and my brother. So I was like an only child for quite a while, and I spent a lot of time on my own, and I spent it with books. I was like, I mean, everyone says it, but Stephen King, I guess, was my first real love. I was obsessed, even when I was young. So yes, I've always read. I tend not to read as much now, weirdly, because I'm writing so much. I don't like to read as much when I'm writing. If I do, I don't read anything crime. But yeah, from an early age, yeah.
What do you read instead if you don't read crime?
Anything. I will read anything. God, what do I read? I will read, you know, oh God, women's fiction. I will read, you know, literary novels. I spent ages kind of catching up on, you know, Hemingway and Bukowski and F. Scott Fitzgerald and everyone who kind of wrote around that time. And I still am catching up. I said yesterday that I only read my first Graham Greene novel like a year and a half ago, and it's ridiculous. Why do I wait so long? I need to, you know. So yeah, I will read anything, non-fiction too.
What is your favourite Stephen King book?
My favourite Stephen King book is 11/22/63. That is just That's the best one, without a doubt. It's got a good ending, which, you know, it's not aliens or a giant spider or whatever. You know, you go through a whole book and it's like, no, not that ending. Come on. Yes, the ending is brilliant, but the story is great. And it's so fat, but you tear through it. The TV show is awful. Wasn't that bad? Did you see that?
No, I didn't. But
well, don't do it.
Yeah, I have been watching the other one, but I only got halfway through. Can't remember the flipping name of it.
Well, Under the Dome. Is
yeah.
it that?
Yeah, Under the Dome wasn't great, was it? Really? No.
Yeah, I got through a big chunk of that book and I didn't finish it, but the setup was amazing. I don't know what happens at the end. I'm gonna guess aliens. So yeah.
What is it about well-crafted endings that you seem to enjoy then? Yeah.
Well, I just think if you know, it's not like watching a film which takes you 90 minutes. You put a lot of effort into getting through a book. And while I don't think you need to tie everything up at the end of a book, you can leave things open, and I often do. You just can't always have it be aliens. You know, I think, you know, you want the payoff, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say is the best tip you can give for crafting a good ending?
Oh, a good tip. Well, I always come up with the ending first. Like, I know where it's going to go. I know some people, you know, I don't plan everything out. I don't plot everything out, but I do know the ending before I go. I think if you don't, you can end up in where you're writing and you'll end up with pages and pages that you don't need. So yes, know your ending before you even begin, I think. And it never is the ending. Every time I write a book, I think I know what the ending is, and it becomes the ending before the real ending. But you need to have that mark to get to, I think.
Yeah.
If you're writing a book, don't just go in with an idea and start writing. Well, it might work for someone, but it doesn't work for me. I need to know where it's going.
Yeah. When you're writing Nothing Important Happens Today, do you think you'll release the book within a book?
Oh, what, the instruction manual?
Yeah.
That threads through it. Yeah, I wonder how that would look, actually. Like, just to take all of those chapters out and have it as the instruction manual. It might be quite an interesting read. Yeah, we should get onto that. Release it as just an ebook or something.
Yeah,
that'd be fun. Cool. They're all my favourite chapters anyway. They were the ones that that interested me the most when I was writing them. They were just so much fun to be that annoyed, you know, and angry with the world. Yeah. Yes, and also, you know, they put all the research was in those chapters from all the documentaries I watched about cults and the books I read, and yeah, that is a great idea. Thanks, I'll use it.
I've just been asked the question. Which cult would you join if you could?
Which cult would I join? Oh, gosh. Well, a nice one. I don't know. That is an amazing question. Do you know what? The one that interested me the most was the Jonestown one.
Yeah.
I think the Jim Jones story started off so well in that he wanted to do something well. He wanted to be a pastor, and he wanted to integrate black people into his congregation because they weren't allowed in the town that he was in. You know, it seemed like a really kind of a wholesome, good story. He was a good Christian. But yeah, and then they moved away and set up their commune. I like the idea of a community, you know, a community of people all chipping in. I've been watching this thing on Netflix. It's Zac Efron, and he's like going around the world, and the third episode he goes to Costa Rica, and there's a commune of people that have just got together from like 28 different countries, and they're all cooking, bringing up their kids together and making their own food and growing crops. And I feel like that's kind of how cults start, you know?
Yeah.
Lovely people getting together, and then someone calls them a cult on the outside, and it all turns to crap. So yeah, if I had to join a cult, I'd join the People of People of Choice is my cult. What's his one called? People's Temple. Yeah.
Yeah. The instruction manual does go into it, and so some depth. What was your favorite part of the research for that?
I just think it's just so interesting. And honestly, I got my hands on so many documentaries, and you could watch so much on YouTube as well. And once you start watching these things, like back to back to back to back, you see patterns in how they start off nicely, and then a leader tries to have sex with his best friend's wife, and then he has, you know, a second in command that then takes the flak for everything. And I was just seeing these patterns emerge of how cults fail, and that was incredibly interesting to me. And it meant I got to write this character who was trying to have a successful cult because he had noticed these same mistakes throughout history.
Yeah, it was definitely a interesting read on audio, because the chapters are very short, and I noticed that in Samaritans there was 180 of them. What's your best tip in writing a short chapter?
Well, I do write short chapters, and Hinton and Holodetrib has got 220, I think, and it's 440 pages long. So
yeah,
2 pages a chapter. I read a book a while back, David Mamet's on directing, and he's teaching a class about directing, and he's got someone directing a scene, and he goes mad at them because they've put things into the scene that don't need to be there. He's like, what are you trying to say in this scene? And they're coming up with things, and he's shooting them down. And I always think about that when I write a chapter. So I know each chapter, the thing I'm trying to say, and I just try to get to that as quickly as I can, which is, and you can do that. If you write a short chapter and you keep your prose sparse and direct, then you can get to the point. And I think that is what I do. So every chapter has to matter. And I just, but also I limit myself each day to how much I write. I used to do 2,000 words a day. That on my first series, 2,000 words a day, 2,000 words a day. Do it. Once it's done, get off. I don't write as much as that each day now, and I think it works for me because I have to make every word count. And so I write 1,000 words, and that can be a chapter. But you can pack a load of information in if you know what you want to say in the chapter.
Is that why pace isn't in it much? Because obviously you seem to like to write villains over police people. Why is that?
I just I think there are a lot of books where the detective is the main focus, and the police procedural thing doesn't interest me. So I'm not going to write it, and it's stuff that I would have to research that I don't want to. So villains are interesting, aren't they? The way their minds work. So yeah, I did that in the first series as well. I wrote it from the killer's perspective and the victim's perspective, because at the time that was something that wasn't being done. And it's interesting to write from a victim as well, who who is about to die. You know, it's just another way of looking at it, isn't it?
Yeah. What makes for an interesting villain? What makes for an interesting villain, would you say?
I like a villain with some like a heart or some humanity. So in the new book, Hinton Hollow Death Trip, obviously there is a killer in the story, but evil is the character that people are drawn to, and I've made evil like a nice guy, like he just wants the world to be nice, so that he doesn't have to be as evil because he's a bit lazy. And I think it's great to write a villain with that heart and that humanity. It's an interesting juxtaposition.
What is it about writing a villain? Because I think that if you could write a series from the point of view of a villain, because not many people seem to have done that.
No, I don't. Do you know any? You read loads of books, right?
Well,
so you could tell me.
The only one I can think of really big is which is a Highsmith one. Yeah.
Oh right, yeah, Ripley.
Yeah, Ripley. That's it. That's the only one.
Oh yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, before I'd read any crime fiction, I'd read Ripley, and that must have informed the way I write and why I write the things I do, because it's brilliant. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I'd love to do it. I think with the January David series, it was January David, but the first and the third book, the villain in that, Eames, I loved writing him, and if I can get to write another January David book, it will be an Eames book, because he's just such a great villain. He's suave and charismatic, and you kind of like him, even though he's doing horrible things.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Because Jeffrey Deaver seemed to do that with The Watchmaker, and I thought, yeah, because I read your books backwards, and I was trying to spot who the villain was. Right. I read Nothing Important, and then I read Samaritans after.
Oh yeah, you can do them in any order. So
yeah, if can you spot any questions down the side?
There's a couple here. Yeah. What book would I take on a desert island? Oh, I would. I love The Great Gatsby. It's my favorite book. It's gorgeous. I try to read it every year, basically. I love it because it's tiny and perfect, and it just makes me feel like a rubbish writer, and that helps me want to be a better writer. But if I was on a desert island, it has to be The Book Thief. I love it. I've never read a book where I've wept through the last 50 pages. So I think that would be my one book I could read again. I've only read it twice, actually. Yeah, I tend not to reread too many books. Apart from Gatsby. But yeah, I would certainly take that.
What is it about the Gatsby? Is it the period stuff that you like?
It is. I think I like writers from that time anyway. The weird thing is, it must have been 10 years ago. I read my first Hemingway book, and I was like, I loved it. I loved how sparse the prose was, and that's kind of how I like to write as well. And I devoured everything, and I thought, yeah, this is it. This is the way you write. And then I read Gatsby because I'd read, what's the A Movable Feast, and Hemingway mentions Fitzgerald in it and a little escapade they get into, and so I thought I'd read it, and it's not the same. It's not that sparse prose that I thought I loved. It's kind of flowery but it's beautiful. It's just beautiful, and yeah, it just blew me away, and it always does. And I like to go on Amazon and read the 1-star reviews of it, just so you can tell yourself, look, this book, Gatsby got 1-star reviews. It's all right, you know.
Yeah, 1-star reviews seem to get quite a good thing with the Locked Up Festival. What's been your favorite 1-star review that you've read? Would you say?
Of me, oh, it's my favorite one. I spoke about this yesterday as well. Someone wrote of Girl 4, Will Carver is clearly an American trying to be English. 1 star. That was it. It's like, I mean, what can you say? What can you say to that? Nothing. So yes, Tender is the Night is brilliant as well. You're right. I love that. I found that quite a tough read to get through, but it's really rewarding. Yeah, that was right. Yeah, good book.
What do you think you'd be able to want to write period yourself if you enjoy that so much?
I don't know. I think if I had a story that called for it, yes, I would. Yes, yeah. I would. My next book after this, again, it's going to be set in Hinton Hollow, but it's set kind of 30 years before, and I think it's quite interesting to write about, 80s, early 90s, whatever. To go back further than that again, that would be something I would do if the story called for it. So yeah, I would do it. I'd do anything. I'll write anything.
I love it. I love it when someone says that, because I've got no idea what's coming.
Yes, the next book is I haven't written it yet, but it's all ready to rock. But yeah, it will be. So there's a character I mentioned in Hinton Hollow Death Trip a few times, and it's his story, and it's a revenge story. I've always wanted to do one, a real kind of gritty revenge book. So that's what it will be. It is mentioned that evil visited Hinton Hollow once before, and so it's that time. It won't be written from the point of view of evil. I'm not doing that again. I'm doing it in a slightly different way.
What would you? How far would you go back?
Ooh, I don't know. How far can I go back? I don't mean I'd go forward as well. Yeah. If I don't want to limit myself, but I don't know, dinosaurs. I'd go from dinosaurs to spacemen. Whatever the story called for. I would like to write. It'd be really interesting to write that Jazz Age kind of thing, but it's been done so well before. So, do you need me doing it? Probably not. Shall I answer one of these? My writing space. My writing space is rubbish. It's rubbish. I used to have. I had something built at the bottom of the garden that was like a shed. It had internet and it was lovely, and I had my Mac down there and a coffee machine. But now it's just in a lounge on the sofa. I tend to write really late at night. I always write kind of midnight onwards. That's once I've finished everything with kids and other work and things, I really have to write late at night. I like that. I'm a night owl. I'm up anyway. But yeah, it's on the sofa now. I turn everything off. No sounds. I listen to music when I edit, but that's it. What music do you like? Favorite band? Ooh. I'll tell you, my favorite music. I love Joni Mitchell. She's the best. She's poetic. She's brilliant musically. I like Bob Dylan too. My favorite band are Steely Dan. All of these are kind of from ages ago. Recently, I like Damien Rice. I like Bon Iver. But I don't listen to music when I write. I listen to the same thing every time I edit, which is the soundtrack to Cinema Paradiso by Ennio Morricone, who passed away last week. I love it. I love it. Would you take on a Chuck Palahniuk type of plot? Yes, of course. My favourites of his books, Fight Club, obviously, because it just changed the way I thought about writing. I think his first 5 or so books were the best ones. Survivor. I love the way the page numbers go backwards. So cool. Diary. What else was there? Invisible Monsters. Lullaby. I loved those first 5 or 6 books where it's just he would write anything he wanted, and they were all so different, and I love that. Yes, I would happily take on that kind of book. I read Snuff. His book Snuff really helped me write Girl 4 because I was writing it from everyone's perspective, and his book Snuff did that. And it was the first time I'd seen it. I thought that'd be a great way to tell this story.
What is it about the multiple perspective angle that you find so useful?
I just think it's just an interesting way to write, and you get to be so many different voices and characters, and you get to inhabit each character rather than just have one narrator, which I do in this book, but he's very different. I think there's an impact you get from saying, I am about to die, I am going to kill this person, I did this, I did that you don't always get when you're talking about, you have a narrator that in the third person, you know? And yeah. I think that's what I enjoy about writing in multiple perspectives. Oh, I haven't read any of your books. What should I read first? Read Good Samaritans first, because it changed my career, and it's a good starting point. That Nothing Important Happens. All the Orenda books, read those, and then if you're going to go back, read Girl 4, because I'm proud of that one. That was one where I got to do it the way I wanted to do it, you know. Yeah, and it's gritty, and it's not perfect, and I like that about it, because, you know, I was young and it was my first real book. Yeah. Is
there anything that you might want to go back and do, or you just leave it? Because I know authors will say they might want to go back, and authors will say they'll leave it.
Yeah, I'm not precious about things that I've written that don't cut the mustard. I'm a real deleter. I will, you know, the last 2 books I've written them almost in full twice through, and then deleted the entire book and just started again. People think it's crazy that, like, what, you didn't hang on to anything? It's like, no, it wasn't good enough, just get rid of it. So, you know, I have had whole books that I've just got rid of and I'll never see again, and it's good if you do that, because then you don't think about it, because you can't recall it all. So no, I'm not precious about it. I would never go back, although that first idea that I had, the Suicide Thursday, it's the only thing I've kept, and I kind of believed in it, and maybe I'm just being nostalgic or something, but I think now I could write it better, I could craft it better, so I will probably try and write that again at some point, but not what I have. I will delete it when I decide to write it again. I'll delete the whole thing and go from the start.
What's the fastest you've ever written it? Because with the short chapters, it must be. Is it easier to write faster, or?
Yes and no. Again, I will do my writing one day, and then I'll read it back the next day, and if it's not good, I'll get rid of it forever. So there are weeks where I've written 15,000 words and only 1,000 of them have made it. So, but I think when I wrote Girl 4, I wrote that in about 6 weeks. I was made redundant, and I didn't get any money from it, and my first child was about to be born. And I just thought, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. I'm going to end up selling computers forever. And so I wrote that in 6 weeks, and it happened. It was great. I don't do it that quickly now, but I'm still quite a quick writer. Yes. So if I do 1,000 words a day, and a book is, you know, 90,000 words, it takes me 3 months. And I tend to, what I end up with after those 90 days isn't always hugely different to what comes out. I edit as I go along. You know, like I said, I'll get rid of stuff happily.
If you get rid of stuff that often, have you ever come across a situation where you're near a deadline and you've got rid of too much and you need to have a problem because you've done that?
I had something once where I'd written something on my computer and I lost 10,000 words right near a deadline. And then I bought this program to kind of recover lost files, and that still couldn't find it. And I was almost done, and I had to rewrite those 10,000 words, and they'd come so easily to me, and I liked them at the time. And then when I rewrote them, I was like, I don't know if these are as good. I don't know if this is as good as what I wrote before, and I never will, because I can't remember what went. But I did. I had to write that very quickly because I was close to deadline.
Yeah, we've only got a few minutes left, so if there's any questions along the side from anybody.
What is this? What is my worst fear? Gosh, wasps. They're my worst fear. When the sun comes out in the summer, and I know there are going to be wasps around, it ruins it for me. I should enjoy it. Everyone's like, "Oh, the sun's out. It's summer." No, there are wasps. It's ruined. What was my first job? What proper job? My favorite job, I had it from when I was 16 till I was 21. I used to come back from university. I worked in a cinema, and that was brilliant. I also worked for the Salvation Army one summer, washing homeless people's clothes. That was interesting. And then when I left university, I worked at a Blockbuster Video while I tried to write a book. And then I sold computers, and a little part of me died every day because every lunchtime I'd be in my car with my laptop trying to write a book. So yeah, I've had a few jobs that weren't great. Is there anything I feel I couldn't write about? No. I'll give anything a go. Whether I do it well, I don't know. But I'll give anything a go, really. Nothing's off limits.
Well, thanks so much.
I've got one more. One more. Favourite film. Cinema Paradiso. It's my favourite film ever. And that's why I just love it. It makes me feel it's magical. And that's why I listen to the soundtrack when I edit as well. What does that allow you to do in the edit, Dan, by listening to that? I just think it's because it would distract me if there were lyrics, and it's all just instrumental. So it can be there, and I get the feeling, but it doesn't put me off because there's no words mixed in with my words, you know. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks so much. Well, it's been great. Thanks for having me. That flew by. It did, didn't it? Yeah. Yeah, it was good.